Hello there guys. Today I'm going to be introducing you to a game that goes by the name of Knytt Underground. It's a platformer by Nicholas Nergren, and the game takes place in an interesting world, both visually and in what happens to you as you play. Most of the world you play with is dark, other than the occasional villager, and of course a variety of colorful and cool looking backgrounds. Going into it, it seems like somewhat of a generic platformer, outside of the somewhat comedic story, in which you play Mii Sprocket, who has the ability to stick to walls and do her short little jump. From there you venture out through these rooms of darkness, and gameplay tends to expand a little bit. There's these different colored balls of light, which each will have different effects on you for short periods of time, allowing you to make big jumps and traverse the land, solving some rudimentary puzzle type situations. From there the world expands a bit, and you'll see different directions, some open to exploration, some not right away. You'll start to see some Metroidvania kind of elements put in place at that point, where you'll need one thing to unlock another, and the world is still kind of linear, but with a sort of pretend kind of freedom. You'll have some basic enemies too, some robots that want you dead, with various abilities such as shooting lasers or electrifying the water beneath your feet. The story continuing to be funny, and making a lot of meta kind of jokes, making fun of the game itself at some points. The story then ends abruptly in a pretty nonsensical fashion, and that's the first chapter. Everything I've mentioned so far you can go see for yourself in the game's demo. I'll link to that below, and it does give a pretty reasonable idea of gameplay. However, not exactly a full idea of gameplay, which is why I'm making this video instead of just telling you all to go play the demo. Because I'd say, in fact, that first level maybe gives you about an idea of half the gameplay, maybe less. Chapter 2, you are suddenly a ball. Said ball has different mechanics. You can control the height of your jump, and with the ball you tend to bounce around a lot, playing off various surfaces at different angles and exploring a couple of new kinds of robots. The second chapter ends pretty abruptly as well, and is probably shorter than the first. You do though get a nice dream sequence after the second chapter, and then are promptly booted back to the main screen. Now that is something worth mentioning. Knytt doesn't start on a menu screen. It throws you right into the action. Everything is gameplay. If you want to get to one of the 3 chapters, you climb into them. I really like it when games pull that kind of thing off well, and I really think that this one does. So, Chapter 1 teaches you how to play Mii, Chapter 2 teaches you how to play Bob the Ball. In the third and final chapter, you can freely switch between the two of them. An odd pairing to be sure, but in the end it works out quite well. The climbing and environmental interaction of the human character goes well with the, bouncing of the ball. In the end it leads to really fun gameplay throughout the third chapter. I haven't completed it myself yet, but I'm finding it to be a hell of a lot of fun. The third chapter opens up to be a big world to explore, several times larger than the previous chapters. The world is pretty, it's interesting in more ways than one, and it doesn't hurt that it sounds pretty nice too. The humor does not stop. The game's gotten a good few grins out of me. Your protagonist, Silent, actually has 2 fairies that can talk for them, and you can actually choose from each fairy whenever you hit a conversation. You can choose which fairy you want to send to talk for you, and each of them have these different personalities that often conflict with each other, so that leads to even more humor that really appeals to people with a particular sense of humor. I count myself as someone that is among those people, so I really love the whole sense of humor that the game has. I really can't think of too much to say negatively against this thing. Technically, it may have some issues. There is a lack of graphical options available in the game, and I've also noticed some frame rate issues a couple times. It's recommended that you try the demo before the full game, making sure that it will run on your computer. What's nice though is that the game will run on PC and Mac, and a beta version is out for Linux. Now, something that I thought would originally be a negative for some people, a particular style of player, was the lack of difficulty. But in the third chapter, as things unfold, that really does change quite a bit. There's plenty of segments that offer quite the challenge in platforming, needing you to combine the skills of your main character with the bouncing at the exact right time of the ball character. You see that particularly in actually a little secret segment that you can find where, well, I'll let you figure that one out for yourself, but let's just say that there are quite a bit of segments where challenging platforming does happen. There's also quite a few places where challenging puzzles happen, and interesting puzzles as well. These often happen in kind of side quests that will get you items for what you need. And generally, these aren't basic, unthought out quests. They generally have interesting character development built into them, as well as the previously mentioned platforming and puzzling segments, which often also involve the platforming. Those segments do come maybe pretty far in between though, and a lot of the game is more about exploring the world. The world is often desolate, but it's always interesting, enjoyable, and immersive. And honestly, the places where it's more relaxing than it is hard are the places that I enjoy the most. As long as technical problems don't become an issue for you, Knytt Underground is a game that I have to recommend. For the world it brings and for the fun gameplay, I believe this thing was made by one guy, and you can tell. It really has that personal feel to it that really only happens with games made by small teams. You can't go wrong with picking this thing up, and it costs about $15 on FastSpring or Gamersgate. And it's also currently trying to get on Steam through the Steam Greenlight process, so I'll link that below if you want to give it a vote. And that is about all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. If you'd like to see more variety gaming content in the future, you can subscribe to this channel and let me know. Otherwise, I've been Maple Dungeons, and I will see you next time.